Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet Zoo. We're back in Northlands and I am currently working on a few different projects in this zoo, but today I'm going to do a little build because I've wanted to fill in this area here for quite some time, and we're going to put in like a coffee shop and a donut shop here because one of the things I have noticed is the reason that our park rating is getting dragged down is not because of the animals, it's mainly because of a lack of food and drink throughout, mainly because there's a lot of queues built up in our main food and drink establishments, and we need to put a few more in to try and spread that crowd out. Now, as you can see, the crowds are starting to really nicely move throughout the other parts of the zoo rather than just being congregated around by the entrance, and that's obviously because we have a lot of animals attracting people up into this new area. The grey seals, the king penguins, Arctic fox, Japanese macaque, Dall sheep, all of them are in this area, and we now have the Asian small-clawed otter, and I'm working on another habitat that you're going to see next week, where we're bringing timber wolves into this zoo. Obviously, I'm also going to be doing a kind of touch-up episode where we go through all of the kind of habitats that we've got and implement some of the new areas and tools that have come out recently in new patches, especially the conservation pack where we've got over 150 new props to play around with. I've already researched them, so it's going to be really interesting to actually bring them in and develop the zoo. The last thing I'm going to be doing in a future episode in terms of developing here is trying to deal with the temperature for our guests in particular. So we're going to be putting in heaters in certain spaces in between the habitats so that there's a constant kind of temperature being maintained by guests. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to put heaters in every single area of the park. It basically means we're going to have areas where there's some heat so that the guests' temperature kind of stays the same, so they can go from a warmer area into a cold area and then transition to the next warm area, because I'm conscious that with playing on hard mode we may actually be seeing the temperature affect our rating and in terms of like guests asking for refunds and stuff. So that's the next plan, as well as overhauling our education and making sure that we are hitting all of our targets and getting our rating up, because the profit continues to fluctuate at Northlands. So let's dive into the build and get this coffee/donut shop made. So the main reason I want to do coffee and donuts is they're a great combo for one, but also the guests in this zoo have a lot of ground to cover, and one of the main complaints is a lack of energy. I've been paying a lot more attention to the management side of things recently because I've needed to move time on and actually manage the zoo for a little bit to bring in some funding. And all of this is a reaction to things that I've found out while looking under the hood of the zoo, I guess. So we're starting off with a basic structure, and obviously we're going to need to keep this pretty small. So I had the idea that this was an old farmer's shed of some description that we've now repurposed and turned into this coffee and donut shop. I'm hoping as well that the coffee actually helps warm up guests, but who knows? They might not. If they all come here and buy iced coffees, they're pretty stupid anyway. Another thing I've done to kind of combat the complaints that I've been getting, which have mainly been about food, drink, lack of access to those sort of things, mainly because of queues in our other facilities, is I've put in a load of vending machines. I'm going to quickly talk to you about these new cladding pieces which have come with the conservation pack. They are incredible, and I saw them and I instantly thought they're going to look great as shelves and things like that, but also they're going to add an extra dimension to any sort of back staff area, because you can then fit in some lights behind these and kind of backlight the whole thing, and it just adds a really nice finishing touch to something and gives a lot of light to these often dark and dingy back office type spaces. I wanted to go with a different roof for this one as well to what I'm used to in this kind of zoo and environment, so we picked up some clay roofing for this. And again, just made it this small lean-to, and I think the beauty of this build is really going to come from how we decorate the external part of it, not the actual structure itself. So I'm not focusing too much on that. And like I said, it's been a while since I built anything in Planet Zoo. I've been taking, you may have noticed in the channel things have been a little bit different lately, and that's mainly because I've not had a lot of time. Work's really picked up and I've not had a great deal of time to sit down and record, and I've also been sorting out a new space at the moment, so things have been a little bit difficult. But I'm hoping to get back on track, and this is just kind of my first video to kind of refresh my skill set, I suppose. So I really like these Planet Zoo. They come with a base game. It's they're like caps for roofs and any sort of thing really. They're just very versatile, and you can use them for a number of different things. first of all, I put those coffee signs and the donut signs underneath the kiosks themselves, and then I thought they're going to look much better if we actually attached them to the roof of the building. So we did that, and then we put in these little freestanding signs, dropped an ATM in, which was already popular, so you'll see in the finished tour that we have another ATM put in place as well. One of the other things is just making sure that guests have access to all of the services that they need. A lot of the complaints that have come in, I'm trying to pay a little bit more attention to. As I've already said, I'm going to try not to repeat myself in this video. But it was really nice to come back into the game, and again, I haven't kept in touch with a lot of the streams and things, so it's been nice to see what this new pack contains, and these insect houses are incredible, and they're going to be perfect for this style of zoo, so I'm really looking forward to using them, and we do use them. I also really like these new lights. They're really cool. They snap well together. You do need to do a little bit of adjustment because there is a little bit of a floating gap in between those two pieces, but I think they look really cool. They give off a nice soft light as well, so they really help to illuminate a place. And as well, the lights that we do eventually put in behind the kiosks themselves, we soften them a little bit as well, because I think a lot of harsh lighting really puts me off, and it's something that I really need to emphasize will, you know, if you make those lighting colors gray as opposed to white, you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of the lighting styles within your zoos if you're building them yourself. These flower pots are incredible. They come with a nice set of like bases. You can even put little feet on them and raise them up a little bit, and the mulch fits in perfectly, and pretty much every small plant sits in nicely with them, as you can see we're doing here. I did try the sunflowers, but I thought we're in a freezing cold environment. Sunflowers are never going to survive unless we build some sort of greenhouse, so I just used tundra-based plant life to go in there. And then we started layering our decor on the rest of this external area. Now, one thing I need to tell you is I've played this game for a long time, and I always thought that there was no way to get your paths without a trim, and it's one of the reasons that I spend so much time using artificial trims and building walls around stuff, because I don't like it. That's until what happens later. We're going to build a little fire pit here because I'm going to use that as the heat source for this area to hopefully warm people up, and it's like the precursor to a number of things that I'm going to be doing to get heat throughout this zoo. So we're actually going to be using the patio heaters from the restaurants, and we're going to have a little bit of smoke on the top as a special effect, and then we're going to sink it down into this fire pit, so it looks like the fire pit is generating a nice bit of heat for our guests that are in this area, and then you've got a little bit of smoke coming off from time to time, just so that you've got that nice like warm feeling and you can see what's going on in the environment, rather than just having it generating heat for no apparent reason and it looking like it's not actually on fire. I just thought that was a nice touch, and again, something I'm going to try to incorporate throughout, using those heaters in various different ways. And actually the heater itself is going to be sunk well into the ground, so you'll not see it, as well as the smokestack. That's not going to be visible at all. It's all just going to emanate from that fire pit. So we're going to try and do that throughout, use various different methods of hiding that space heater and just trying to make things work a little bit more. Maybe even use those torches to generate light, but also sink the fire from the restaurant heater into the ground, so it looks like our torches are actually generating heat. You may remember ages ago when we first started putting some lighting throughout this zoo, I made some little fire pits using the planters from the Arctic expansion, and we may well put a heat source within them to help things going. The reason I use the restaurant patio heaters is they actually cost less upkeep than the heaters for habitats, so that's why they get used. So everything's starting to look good and it's starting to flesh out. We've got a nice little bit of variation in the environment, and now we're going to paint some of the terrain, because obviously the snow has melted, so we need to make sure that the terrain doesn't look all one-dimensional. So we use a mixture of short grass, long grass, soil, hard soil, and a little bit of rock just where the actual kiosks and vendors are. It's looking really good so far. We've got a nice bit of conservation, which again improves our education rating. I'm just moving these trees out of the way. So I didn't realize that when you put these things on the ground, they actually do there's no barrier whatsoever. And it's such a shame that there isn't a natural path with no sides to it. Obviously, I understand why they need to do that, because you wouldn't be able to tell where your path is. But yeah, it is such a shame. But thankfully, bark fits in really well here. And I don't know why I didn't think of this. So I've actually, since the end of this recording, gone back throughout the entire zoo and changed most of the paths to bark chipping paths, because I don't actually want trims on the path. And I can't believe it's taken me this long to just think a little bit more inside the box and realize what I've been doing wrong for 13 or 14 episodes. Anyway, we then decided to use some rocks just to differentiate between what path is which, and then give ourselves a nice little border for this area and define where you are on the normal path to where you are where the actual coffee shop and donut shop are. Then I remembered, and you may not know this, but a few months ago I did a mini-sode where I made some tundra brushes for foliage and stuff. And here we are putting them in now. I can't believe I forgot I'd done this, but it really made this process of fleshing out this area so much quicker, and everything fits in really nicely because it's a nice compact thing and they merge together really well. I made sure of that and made sure that we could actually pull that off. So that was really something that I was pretty happy with. And we're just finishing off doing this to every other area that's kind of like blank and missing something in this space, using each of our biome and each of our continent foliage packs for this particular tundra biome. And I am going to be doing some more of these. It just takes a long time to do some of the other biomes because there are multi-continent biomes. But look out for them in the future. The last thing to do was to just remove anything that's coming over into the path here, and then we move on with our backlights for the actual vendors themselves. So as you can see, this looks very bright to the point where it's a little bit distracting, and these lights are always going to be on. We're never going to turn these off, so it's important that they aren't too much of a distraction, and we just want a nice soft light behind the vendors themselves. So just making sure it's all lined up and not overlapping outside of the building itself. Move it down, highlight the whole thing, and then change the color to something a little bit darker. So it's a nice softer light, and then when we sync it back, it gets even a little bit more softer, and then we're all good to go. Now, I really liked these caps, and I wanted to carry them on the front pillars of the building itself, just to finish it off. It looked a little bit... there was something missing from it, and I decided that it was these caps, just to soften the edges and not make them look like these exposed walls facing one way, because I do think some of the actual exterior walls do tend to look like they need something extra just to finish them off, unless you are kind of rounding off an entire building with them. But when they're just front on exposed like this little shed that we've created, you do need to put something on there to finish it off, whether it's a pillar or a few different types of posts, or just loop something like this around it to give it a soft edge. And then it just needed to adjust those speakers a little bit. Now, I did toy with the idea of actually putting in a divide between the two, but decided to just leave it open. I think it just looked a little bit better that way. We are almost finished. I've just got a few more bits and pieces to do. I wanted to put kind of like a do not touch sign here where the fire pit is, because this is now kind of exposed to the guests. I tried using the quiet, don't disturb the animals sign, and putting one of the guest barrier those ones. It didn't work, so I then decided to find another thing to use as a signpost, and ended up settling on one of the Aztec style signposts. I just thought a nice stone-based sign would be best for this area here. Something that doesn't stand out too much and doesn't have a large footprint on the rest of the actual build, because this is just a minimal thing to add a little bit of extra like bump to the structure itself. And that's about it. And you can see already it's pretty popular. Snowing again, but as you can see, again, the fire pit is keeping everybody nice and warm. The bark works really well with the stone, and you've got these nice little walk-up kiosks where people are able to get coffee, a few bits and pieces, ATM machines being used, and yeah, really happy with this one. It was a pretty simple build, pretty quick one. The guests are having some pathing issues though, but we'll just pretend that didn't happen. And again, it was nice to just come back to the game and play for a little bit and see where I was. Obviously, when I came back in, I started with something huge and it wasn't working out. So to come back and do something a bit more basic, to finish off an area of the zoo that's kind of been lacking for a while, it was really nice. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So there's more Planet Zoo on the way. I am trying to get a better schedule, and I hope you understand that sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. I'm trying to be a bit more consistent with things, especially the popular stuff. Thanks for watching. Make sure you drop me a like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you for the next one. Bye-bye.